Hello everyone, back tuning into today's video. We're going to do a Sunday roundup today. So we're going to have a look, start off with what's happening in America. They've got some very cold weather coming up over the next few days with a real northeaster bringing blizzards to the eastern side around Tuesday, eastern side of America, I should say around Tuesday. And we'll also have a look at things like sea surface temperature anomalies, what's happening in terms of solar activity and weather next week, 10 days, and CFSB2 for next month as well. So quite a lot to cram in to today's video, and I'll get on with it for you in a second. Before I get on with that, just say about the ads. This video ads are most paid. You say, oh no, content, you watch them, they'll close back up again. It does help to pay for GWV.com. Thanks very much for doing that. Later on, we might have a look at the next 3 months with the JMA on the blog. That'll be coming up around this evening, late afternoon, this evening sometime. Around then. That takes us from next month, from April through to June. So that'll be quite interesting to see what the JMA is predicting for the next 3 months. So as I say, we've got very cold weather coming up across many parts of America in the next week or so. These are the temperature anomalies actually for the next week. This is taking us from the 11th through to the 19th of March. You can see it's quite warm out in the west, but in the east looks really cold. Temperature anomalies are coming out. I think these are Fahrenheit, so coming out around 8 to 12 Fahrenheit below average across eastern parts of the states in the next week. This is what's happening. We've got a ridge building down from Canada into the Midwest. On the eastern side of that ridge, we're putting down this very cold northerly wind. There's the upper air temperatures showing that the cold air really has pushed down into many northern and eastern parts of the states, so really cold as we go up towards the Canadian border. But that cold air does extend down into many eastern parts of America. Now, over the next couple of days, we're going to find low pressure developing to the south, and that's going to push northwards up the eastern side. So this is how things are looking at midnight on Wednesday, with an area of low pressure just off the eastern seaboard, and that's a classic northeast. You've got the cold air associated with this high pressure that's pushed out of Canada, moving down into the Midwest, and then the low pressure on the eastern side of America on the east seaboard. The squeeze between the two pressure belts, so the high pressure and low pressure, produces that northeasterly wind, and of course that's a real snowmaker, because as the warm air from the Atlantic meets the cold air from Canada, you get the clash between the two air masses, and that can produce copious amounts of snow. There's the upper air temperatures for Wednesday. You see most parts of central, northern, eastern America still looking very cold. It is warm out in the west, Midwest, or I should say the western parts of America. They're going to have a bit of a heat wave down towards New Mexico and in towards California as well. But over in the north and the east, got that severe cold air out of Canada engaging with this low pressure off the east seaboard, and that produces precipitation. So going to be lots of it around through Tuesday. We find that those outbreaks of snow pushing up the eastern side of America. Some really heavy snow is in there, bright colours at midday on Tuesday here on the eastern seaboard, indicated if you're taking a trip to New York, for example, you might get a lot of snow through the early and middle part of the week. That's how the upper air temperatures are looking on Tuesday, and then that snow pushes up towards Nova Scotia as we go through into Wednesday, begins to ease off down across the states, but still very cold. Those upper air temperatures still looking really, really cold there for many eastern parts of America. However, later towards the end of next week, things do start to improve. So this ridge collapses down across many central eastern parts of America through the latter stages of the week, but eventually a milder west-southwesterly flow begins to come round the top. So as we get through to next weekend, it does look a good deal milder there. The high pressure is back down towards the southern states, going down towards Florida, that sort of area, and we're beginning to pull up the wind from the southwest. And there's the upper air temperatures by next weekend, looking much milder across most parts of the states. The cold air is pushed back in towards Canada. So it's going to be quite severe for a few days. By the time you get through to this time next week, we should start to see the weather beginning to ease down. Talking of snow, so this is how things are looking in terms of snow cover across Eurasia at the moment. I haven't looked at these since we did winter updates. So many parts of Europe are now snow-free. Of course, we have got some snow around the Alps and also towards the Pyrenees. So the mountainous areas have got snow, as you would expect. But actually, many parts of mainland Europe now looking pretty much snow-free. Scandinavia, though, does have quite a lot of snow, except down in the south of Sweden. Not much snow there, but come north in towards northern parts of Sweden, Norway, Finland, places like that, we have got plenty of snow there. Over towards Russia, so the western border with Russia and Europe is more or less snow-free now, but have got plenty of snow still left across most parts of Russia and the Siberian Plain, as you would expect. Looks like I've got quite a lot of Arctic sea ice, indicated by that yellow area just there, but actually we're well down for Arctic sea ice on where you would expect us to be. So this is from the National Sea Ice Centre, and you can see that the blue line just here is where we are in terms of Arctic sea ice for 2017, and we're under trend. Actually, we're quite significantly under the trend, which is the thick grey line just here. That's the 30-year average. We're also under 2012, and that was the lowest Arctic sea ice extent in terms of minimum ice loss around August, September 2012. Just here we had a bit of a death spiral, I'm sure you remember it. That was the worst year in terms of Arctic sea ice. We're under that at the moment, so you might assume that we're going to finish up when we get to around August, September, being under the 2012 death spiral year in terms of how much Arctic sea ice we have when all the melting is finished through the summer. Doesn't necessarily follow that that will happen, because we might get a recovery at any point. So it's possible that eventually we'll pull this blue line back up and do something like that. You never really tell how things are going to work out this early in the season, but of course it's not a great starting point. We'll be beginning to get to the melt season in terms of Arctic sea ice in the next couple of months. We'll start to see things moving down, as we see via the trend line just here. That normally begins in April or May, so it's not a great place to be starting from, having such low Arctic sea ice extent, but it doesn't necessarily follow through that we're going to have a record-breaking melt year. We just have to wait and see on that. This is how the oceans are looking in terms of sea surface temperature anomalies. So, of course, we're interested in what's happening in the Pacific. Still looks pretty warm here over in the equatorial Pacific towards Peru. We've got a lot of orange and red over there. So warm sea surface temperature anomalies are still gathering off the coast of Peru. This is sort of the dying signal of that exceptionally weak La Nina that we had over the winter. So we could go either way with this, really, from where we are right now. Just because we've got all this warmth over in the eastern Pacific, equatorial Pacific, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to go into an El Nino. But it is a pretty warm signal that we've got going on there. And many of the long-range models are predicting an El Nino to return by the time we get through to the summer and the autumn. In the northeastern Pacific, it's looking very cold, though. We've got a lot of cold water up there. So it appears that the sea surface temperature anomalies are lowering in the northeastern Pacific, and so the PDO, the Pacific Decadal Oscillation, is moving into a colder phase. The last 2 or 3 years it's been quite warm. It's a colder PDO that we've got going on right now with these cold sea surface temperature anomalies up here in the northeastern Pacific. And that means without any El Nino from the equatorial Pacific, just here, that tries to get going, is probably going to have more of a struggle, certainly compared to what we had a couple of years ago. We had the Super Nino in 2015-16. I'd be surprised if we get a Super Nino going this year with the northern or northeastern Pacific looking that cold. But we wait and see what's going to happen there. And of course, we'll do the next ENSO update later in the month, usually the last Saturday of the month. Over in the Atlantic, it looks fairly cool up in the northern part of the Atlantic Ocean again. And the tropics have cooled down a little bit as well. They were running quite warm earlier in the winter, but they've cooled down back closer to average as well. There's nothing there to suggest in the tropics that we're going to have a big hurricane season this year. But, of course, those seas of temperature on could warm over the next 2 or 3 months. This is how CFS V2 is predicting things to go in the ENSO region. It's actually backing off that El Nino signal a little bit at the moment. So this is where we are right now. We are on the warmer side of neutral, but it is still neutral in terms of what's happening in the central part of the equatorial Pacific. Now you'll see that the trend line, which is the black dash line, is moving up. So by, say, June, we're close to an El Nino, but it's not going any higher than that actually. So you can see that these blue lines just here, which are ensemble members, each line represents an individual ensemble member of the CFS model, and the blue lines are the latest ensemble members, if you like. So you see many of those are actually staying around ENSO neutral. The red lines were the older ensemble members. They were actually going for a proper El Nino event a couple of weeks ago, but it appears that mod is beginning to back off and pull back a little bit from that El Nino. So it may be that we're going to go from a very weak La Nina this year to a very weak, or last year, very weak La Nina last year to a very weak El Nino this year, something like that. I think El Nino will struggle to really get going with the northeastern Pacific as cold as it is, but we'll be discussing this in much more depth as we get through to the end of the month. The last Saturday of the month is when we'll do our ENSO update. Looking at the sun, this is the solar disk on our side of the disk today from solarham.net, and we've got no sunspots at all. We're having quite a prolonged run now of spotless day, so there's no sunspots on the sun at the moment. Hasn't been for a few days. This is the Gaz Weather, this is Gaz Weather's spring season daily solar tracker, just updated from our friend James Ackrill. Thanks to James for sending this through, and we can see that here we have had a run of spotless days. These orange spots down here indicating that we're flatlining at the moment in terms of sunspots. So been about a week now, I think, that we've had no recorded or no visible sunspots on the sun. And you see that the last time we had this kind of a run of several days with no spots was back around the end of December and into the start of January just there. And then we had a bit of a ramp up as we went through into the middle of January. The trend lines are moving down now, so the green and the red lines just here, which are the trends of the solar cycle, they are beginning to move backwards again. And we know we're moving down into solar minimum. We won't arrive in solar minimum until around 2019, but it's going to be downhill all the way now, really, in terms of sunspot numbers, although it's not a linear process, so we may get various spikes upwards, as we've had, or as we see here on the solar tracker, but the trend will be down all the way into solar minimum, which is going to occur in around 18 months to a couple of years away. The reason we look at solar activity is that there is a relationship between low sunspot numbers, weak solar activity, and solar minimum, and an increased risk of blocking in the North Pole, and blocking is the route to getting cold weather out of the pole into mid-latitude. So essentially, when you've got weak solar activity, when you've got minimum sunspot numbers, it can be a cold signal. Although we are moving downwards with the solar cycle, actually the best time to get colder winters in terms of the solar cycle is just as you come out of solar minimum, because there's always a time lag. So what's actually happening at the moment is that we're unraveling, if you like, the solar maximum that occurred a couple of years ago when we reached a maximum of solar cycle 24. We're still unraveling from that. So it'll be round the exact solar minimum, and then a couple of years after solar minimum that we've probably got our greatest chance of getting northern blocking and colder winters. Right, let's have a look at the weather then, and this is the temperature anomaly for the next week in complete contrast to America's temperature anomaly, which is this one just here. Our temperature anomaly for the next week, the 11th to the 19th of March over in Europe, is coming out milder than average pretty much everywhere. There's a little bit of colder than average temperature anomalies down across Spain and Portugal, and a little bit still left across Norway, but most parts of Europe are coming out milder than average, except in the southeast. It's been the story through the winter, down into the Balkans, into Greece and Turkey. Looks quite a bit colder there, but most parts of Europe are going to have a mild week. British Isles is included in that. The ensembles, GFS ensembles, are looking like this. The red line here is the 30-year temperature average in terms of the upper air temperature. Is going to have a mild week coming up. We might see temperatures going up towards 18 degrees at some point around Tuesday or Wednesday if we get a bit of sunshine, maybe even a little bit higher, and plenty of dry weather coming up as well. There is some rain that we've got to get out of the way today, but after that it looks mostly dry through towards the end of the week. Now, we get to the end of the week and the weekend, and we see a drop in the temperature is occurring. We're only going down to average temperature, so nothing particularly cold, but it is going to be, we are going to have a drop in temperature. There's going to be a drop in temperature at the end of the week and into next weekend, and that will be associated with more rainfall coming through, so the precipitation spikes do start to return there as we get through towards, say, around Thursday, Friday for the north, and then elsewhere probably over next weekend. This is how GFS is looking for Thursday. We're in a westerly flow. Looks quite unsettled. There'll be rain in the northwest. The south could just about be holding on to dry weather on Thursday. But by Friday, I think we're going to break that rainfall through to most parts of the country. Even down in the south, there'll probably be some rain coming through. And then that sets us up for quite an unsettled weekend. Low pressure coming in off the Atlantic, bringing bands of rain. Quite tight packed isobars as well next weekend. So looks like it's going to be pretty windy as well as those bands of rain coming in. Now, we do pull down some slightly colder air here on Monday, the 20th of March. A little bit of a northerly coming down on the backside of this low pressure that's clearing in towards Scandinavia. But very quickly we return to southwesterlies. So by the time we get through to day 10, which is Wednesday 22nd of March, we're back into a southwesterly flow with high pressure to the south and low pressure to the north. It looks very Atlantic driven though for the next week to 10 days. East End Earth is very similar. We've got the high pressure still hanging on in the south on Thursday, still producing some quite warm temperatures there, but it's turning more unsettled in the north. And these more unsettled conditions are spread down across the country at the end of the coming week and into next weekend, turning more generally unsettled across the country. And then we keep it unsettled through the rest of the weekend and into the following week. Those westerlies are coming through, bringing bouts of rain. And some quite windy weather is possible as well. This is Tuesday 21st of March, when this is looking really quite a wet and windy day for many parts of the country. And that's how we finish up on day 10. Westerly is firmly established, so it's unsettled looking signal with bands of rain coming across the country. And still quite windy, especially so in the northwest. So we're going to have about 5 or 6 days of really quite dry weather and at times fairly warm. Through starting tomorrow, going through to around Thursday or Friday. Then it turns more unsettled. Looks like those unsettled conditions will carry on through then into next weekend and the following week. Finally, have a look at the CFS V2 for the next month. These are the 500 millibar height anomalies broken down into week periods. The first week period taking us from today, the 12th, through to the 18th of March. We've got this ridge around the southwest of the country. Low pressure is up to the north, so a lot of dry weather is coming in with that, albeit we know that by the end of the coming week, this high pressure is going to start to get broken down and it will begin to turn more unsettled from the north or west. But overall, for the anomaly for the week, actually it looks quite dry and fairly warm as well. Then we go through to week 2, which is the 19th to the 25th of March. This one looks very unsettled. Low pressure is dominating, where that high pressure has been broken and has pushed back into the central Atlantic. quite cool as well with that, because the alignment of the ridge and the low pressure is bringing the air from the northwest to the southeast. So we've got a northwest-southeast trajectory with the jet stream and the areas of low pressure. So that looks quite a lot cooler there for that third week of March, and fairly unsettled as well. Going through to week 3, complete change again. This is from the 26th of March through to the 1st of April, and we find ridging coming back across the country and building to the north as well. So that's turning a lot more settled. High pressure is dominating. The jet stream is doing something like that. That could be very pleasant actually, because you could be dragging up some quite warm air from the south and the southwest with that to the end of March and into the start of April. So dry and warm for the very end of March, potentially. And then we go through to week 4, which is the 2nd through to the 8th of March. And it's all changed again. The ridge pulls into the central part of the Atlantic. Also got a little bit of ridging around Greenland. Low pressure looks like it's coming in over Scandinavia, so that could be turning winds into the north there as we go through the 2nd to the 8th of April, possibly bringing some colder weather back in for the early part of April. Looks very topsy-turvy for the next month with the CFS. All weeks are looking different. So that will keep us on our toes with lots of changes taking place. But of course, that's always highly experimental. Coming back to the next week to 10 days, I think we can say that for the next 5 days, we're probably going to have a lot of dry and warm weather. Once we get today's rain out of the way, should be plenty of settled weather. Not sure it'll be a huge amounts of sunshine. Cloud will probably be a bit of an issue in the coming days, and that will limit temperature potentially. If the sun comes out for a prolonged period, we might get those temperatures around Wednesday popping up close to 20 degrees, but it will depend on how much cloud we get. By the end of the week, I think we're going to break down the high pressure and start to turn it more unsettled. That sets us up for quite an unsettled spell next weekend. And then the following week, that also looking really quite unsettled with some potentially quite wet and windy weather at times. Right, later on the blog, we'll have a look at the JMA for the next month, for the next 3 months, I should say. It's going to take us from April next month through to June. So that'll be quite interesting to see what that's showing. But that's all for now. Thanks for watching.